Chiyo is another character that doesn't get talked about due to her very short time in the Naruto series, but she does possess some highlights and scaling that's worth talking about, as most of it revolves around her being a Kunoichi who could rival the likes of the Sannin in their prime and legendary shinobi like Hanzo. So Chiyo is an elder shinobi of the Hidden Sand Village, where she's renowned for being a skilled Minoko ninja and a poison expert. Her skills of developing poison was used during the days of the Second Shinobi War. However, Tsunade was able to decipher and create antidotes for every single one of them, which led to her holding a deep grudge for Tsunade. Alongside that, she's also a master puppeteer, one of the very few we see in the series, alongside Kankuro and Sasori. Not too much is known about her puppet skills in terms of reputation, but for what is shown in this series, Chiyo has a great skill with using puppets in combat. She also possesses the Chikamatsu collection of 10 puppets, a collection of powerful puppets created by the first puppeteer and the inventor of the puppet master jutsu. This technique demonstrates Chiyo's mastery as the number of puppets you control measures the puppet master's level of skill. She was also stated to have destroyed an entire fortress with them, and possibly achieved greater accomplishments with such a collection. Alongside this and her medical ninjutsu, she also possesses a very powerful forbidden jutsu called Kisho Tensei. This ninjutsu was originally designed to breathe life into puppets in exchange for one's own life. Chiyo, however, was able to use this technique to bring Gaara back from the dead in exchange for her own life. It's even mentioned that Chiyo is the only person that can use this jutsu, and at one point was planning on sacrificing herself to bring Sasori's mom and dad puppets to life. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to discussing her feats and scaling, there's very little to go off of. However, there is another implication about Chiyo I want to go over first, as I do think many tend to overrate her just because of this one statement. That being that she fought Hanzo many times. This statement is mentioned by a lot of people when it comes to scaling Chiyo, as Hanzo was one of the most powerful shinobi in history, well known and feared by many, including the legendary Sannin. There are very few shinobi who are known to have survived an encounter with Hanzo, and those who have will usually gain a stellar reputation due to Hanzo singing praises about them. So being able to survive a fight against Hanzo, let alone many fights, is impressive, and should constitute to their strength and skill considering how strong he was. However, most of the shinobi who did survive their encounter with Hanzo only did so because he spared their lives. For instance, the Sannin were spared by Hanzo because he acknowledged their strength. The same goes for Mifune, as when he was a young samurai, Hanzo acknowledged his strong conviction. But when it comes to Chiyo, there's nothing to suggest that she showed any strength or conviction that made Hanzo want to spare her. There's also nothing to suggest that she actually fought him except for this one statement. Now the reason why I say this is because the statement can also be interpreted as she fought the salamander many times, which wouldn't be too outlandish considering she did know how to make an antidote for its poison and knows about the 5-minute delay it has before it could work on more poison. Of course, to many this is a very ratty and stupid argument, as you could just say that due to the salamander being Hanzo's summoning, Chiyo more than likely did fight Hanzo alongside it. The issue is, Chiyo's reputation doesn't highlight her for being a powerful and feared Kunoichi of the Sand, but a well-known poison expert. And if she did fight Hanzo many times, he would have also sang praises about her, just like he did for the Sannin, who by the way didn't manage to put a scratch on him, even with assistance from a platoon. However, we don't know how the fights went down, such as if she fought him one-on-one or had assistance. But based off the info provided, we can conclude that Chiyo was in fact strong enough to survive these multiple encounters, which should mean that she's a formidable Kunoichi to go up against and possibly had more talent than that of the Sannin when they were at their prime. But it cannot be said that she scales to Hanzo due to a lack of information, as Hanzo has statements that can be used to scale him to stronger versions of the Sannin. Yet when it comes to Chiyo's overall strength, it's a very interesting topic. The data books describe Chiyo as a legendary shinobi who possessed great skills that even impress shinobi of other nations, such as skills in medical ninjutsu, taijutsu, and puppet jutsu. This all could stem from her unknown feats during the Second Shinobi War, as that would be a time where she was able to display all her skills. But because of the wars and losses Chiyo experienced over the years, it caused that fire that once lit her spirit to fade away, making her become a bitter old lady that awaited her death. Even in the series, Chiyo showed no care about the Sand Village or any of its members, and since her own will faded, this means that she also got weaker, similar to Hanzo. However, after mistaking Kakashi for his father, the fire that she once had all those years ago returned, as she decides to take him on without any of her puppets. Keep in mind that Kakashi's father Sakamo was a shinobi that killed Chiyo's son, and it was stated that the Sannin in their prime paled in comparison to him. Now this doesn't factually mean that Chiyo would have been able to defeat him, as the only reason why she attacked him was out of revenge, but it does show that even at her old age, she could still manage to put a fight against other shinobi once her will returned. With this newfound fire, it allowed her to become a very valuable asset when teaming up with Sakura during their fight against Sasori. As for the most part, Chiyo was shown to be very formidable against him when it came to puppet manipulation, as both were equally matched during their clashes, so much so that it forced Sasori to use the third Kazekage's Iron Sand Jutsu. Just for the record, Sasori is a very powerful shinobi, who prior to joining the Akatsuki was able to take down the third Kazekage. The third is mentioned to being the most powerful of the Kazekage, and had abilities that can even rival the Biju. Sasori's ability to manipulate puppets came from his training with Chiyo at a young age. He became well known during the Third Shinobi War for his skillful uses of puppets, and later increased the overall power and abilities by turning himself into a puppet after leaving the Sand Village. But even after many years, Chiyo is still able to contest him in battle. The data books even express Chiyo as a flower that doesn't wilt, and that her skills with puppets are still ingrained into her, showing no kinds of weakness. This could mean that once she found the will that she once lost, all the strength she once had came back as well, meaning that the feats she demonstrates in this fight indicate what she was capable of at her prime. Now I know many will disagree, but there isn't any indication that Chiyo got any weaker over the years by any means other than her lack of will. In fact, during the first half of their fight with Sasori, Chiyo for the most part was carrying Sakura, as without her, Sakura would have been dead before the third Kazekage pet was even revealed. However, that doesn't mean that Chiyo scales to Sakura, because just as much as Sakura needed Chiyo, Chiyo also needed Sakura, as without her, she wouldn't have been able to defeat the third Kazekage puppet, let alone have a way to counter Sasori's poison. So from this info, we can conclude that Chiyo even at her old age should be considered Kage level. She could also even be one of the most powerful shinobi to come out of the Sand Village. I'd even go as far as to say that she would be in the top 5 strongest in the Sand Village, but she doesn't have enough info to really place her above the likes of the 3rd or the 5th Kazekage. And if you do want to consider her an actual rival to Hanzo, which I still don't think she is, you could maybe make an argument if you really lean on the one statement made by her. Overall, I will say that Chiyo is a bit more powerful than I initially thought. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.